Hello, my name is Bonnie and this is my channel, A Knitter Obsessed. This is my knitting podcast and today we are talking all about gift knitting. So this is not one of my regular podcast episodes. This is one of my in-between weeks while I, spend some time actually getting some knitting done for the podcast episodes. I want to talk all about gift knitting. I've done a lot of gift knitting in my life. Until very recently, I gave away almost all of the knits that I made until one day I realized I really didn't own any of my own knitting. That being said, I still love gift knitting. I've still already given multiple gifts this year, and it's not something I plan to stop doing anytime soon, even as I work on, knitting more things for myself in the meantime. And so I thought today I would talk about what I look for in patterns when I gift knit, what my criteria are, what I think makes something a good option as a gift knit, as well as I did a little bit of a pattern roundup on Ravelry, so I wanted to share some of those patterns with you in case you're looking for something to gift to somebody. And then to wrap it all up, my wonderful mother-in-law actually lent me back all of the things that I have gift knit her over the years. And so I thought I would do a little bit of a show and tell and show you guys some of the patterns that I have made and given away to other people. And one of them in particular might be one of my favorite things that I have ever knit. And so I thought that would be a lot of fun. So without further ado, let's get into it. What I look for when I personally gift knit. I'm not necessarily making everybody a blanket because that is a lot of work. And while I love the intentionality behind it, there's only so many hours in a day. And so a lot of what I look for in gift knits is for it to be a relatively quick knit. I make exceptions for that. If I am able to plan ahead and think of a project that I think is super worth it, I'll actually show one here at the end. I will go for a project that's a little bit more involved. Or, like I said, if I'm making a baby blanket for someone, obviously that's a little bit of a longer project, and I do just plan ahead for those. But if we're talking like Christmas gifts or birthday gifts or, any of that, I do try to make sure they are fairly quick knits. I try to make sure they're not going to use too much yarn, because if it's not using a lot of yarn, I can splurge and use slightly nicer yarn. That is usually my trade-off. And I do just try to match the yarn to the person that I'm giving the gift to. So if I know someone is really going to need a machine washable project, I really try to find yarn that is going to fit that bill. If I'm going to knit for someone, however, that I know has no problem taking care of knits, like my mother-in-law, because she is a crocheter, and so I know she knows what she's doing, then sometimes I'll splurge and get them the more natural fibers. Also, I don't know if you just heard that, my dog is taking a nap behind the chair. She's being a little vocal about it, so that's what that is if you heard the little grumbly sound. Other things I look for. I have mentioned before on the channel that I am not a massive fan of plain stockinette knitting, and that is just a personal choice. I don't find it very engaging. I know a lot of people do. So if what you like is plain stockinette knitting, you should look for gift patterns that have a lot of plain stockinette knitting. I tend to not do that. Because my thought being, not only is it a gift for the person, I want to make sure they're going to love it. I want to make sure they are going to be able to take care of it, that they're going to get use out of it. I also have to enjoy the process. So that is the other criteria, is that I only like to knit things that I personally enjoy knitting. And, because it shouldn't be a chore. It should be fun. You should be putting love into the project, not like frustration and rage. So you will notice on my pattern roundup, there is, I don't think anything that is just plain stockinette knitting. I picked things with textures or, cables, like some fun things that keep you engaged. But there is one last criteria, which is that while it needs to be fun, it needs to be something you enjoy, for me personally, I don't want it to be overwhelmingly challenging either. So I'm looking for quick knits that don't use too much yarn, that keep my brain engaged and are fun to do, but aren't overwhelming or frustrating or too difficult. So that's usually my criteria for a gift knit. And so with that, I did put together a couple of bundles on Ravelry. If you want to follow me on Ravelry, my username is Bonnie Coit. I will link the spelling, or I will put the spelling down below in the description box. But I did put together a couple of bundles in my favorites, just so that you can see these on your own time if you would like to. I am going to be looking at the patterns on my iPad, But I will have pictures up here. I'll have everything listed in the description below. And so yeah, we can go through these patterns together. So my personal choice when I am gift knitting for someone, and I'm looking for quick, I'm looking for engaging, and I'm looking for useful for them, falls into two categories for me: beanies and fingerless mitts. Those are the two things that I like to knit for people. So the first one I'll talk about is hats, because that is basically what I like to knit for people. Hats are one of my favorite things to knit. I think they're so fun. I think they are like just the right size of project to be incredibly engaging without, like I said, getting tedious or overwhelming. Like by the time you want to be done with the hat, you're already done with it. It's fine. So the first one I'll talk about is the Boon Island Hat by Aimee Alexander. I've talked about this one on the channel before in my January and February finished objects video, which I'll put a link to up above. But this is an all over broken rib hat. It's pretty simple. There's no extra brim or anything. You just cast on stitches, knit broken rib until you're ready to decrease, and then it has this really nice neat decrease. It makes a fairly slouchy hat, but you know, you can always fold a brim and have it be tighter on your head, which is lovely. And the reason I love it is it's nice and squishy because of the broken rib. The broken rib is interesting. It's, you know, a little bit more interesting than either straight ribbing or straight stockinette. Sorry, my dogs are being very restless and very noisy today. It's okay. And yeah, it's great. The one I made for my husband, which I was trying to look around to see if I could find it so I could, you know, re-show it off, but he seems to have hidden it somewhere. But I knit it in less than a skein of a worsted weight wool. Like I probably used 3/4 of a 100-gram skein, and it came out great. It's slouchy on him. It's comfortable. He really likes it. It was easy. I think I knit it in like just a few days. It was not hard at all. So I do highly recommend that one. I think it's a hat anyone would be happy to wear, you know, keep their head warm, and it's not too fussy, and it's not too like crazy of a pattern that you have to worry if it's going to go with someone's style or not. So yeah, the Boon Island Hat by Aimee Alexander, probably one of my like #1 choices if you're doing gift knitting. It is available on Ravelry for $6.50 US. And yeah, great option. The other one I was thinking is if you like the idea of sort of a ribbed hat, but you maybe want to go for a little bit more stylized, a little squishier, and also just maybe you want a little bit of a different technique. The Harlow hat by Andrea Mowry would also be an amazing option. So this is an all over brioche hat, and it's technically written for 2-color brioche. So you would alternate back and forth, and you can have the contrasting stripes on the hat. But you don't have to do 2-color brioche. You could just do one. And that brioche is going to be so squishy and just so nice on the head. Like, I think this would be just fantastic to give to someone. I think they would, I don't think anyone could dislike it. Like, I think this would be such a nice hat. It is written for fingering weight yarn, so, you know, it'll take a little while to knit up, but there is a worsted weight version if you would prefer that. And I've knit several Andrea Mowry patterns before, and her patterns are fantastic. Like, you seriously can't go wrong with her patterns. They're so nice. So I think that would be an amazing option. I honestly really want to knit one myself, and I plan to. The pattern is available for $7 US on Ravelry, and yeah, I think that one would be a winner for sure. The other one, I have knit this before. I, again, can't find the hat itself, but this is one of the few things I actually knit for myself. Which, if I ever do a knitting flops video, unfortunately that hat would have to be in it, but it has nothing to do with the pattern and everything to do with a lot of weird choices that I made. So it's a story for another time. But I promise the pattern is fantastic. So that is the Lark Hat by Irina Dmitrieva. And this is an all over cabled beanie. And the cables look super intricate. They are fairly intricate. But I love cabling. I think it's so much fun. I don't mind reading cabling charts. And the finished object is just so stunning. I knit mine in red when I knit it, and it was just like every single row as the cables grew and crossed and twisted, just I got more and more excited and wanted to knit more and more of it and knit faster and faster. And before you knew it, I had a whole cabled hat. Which, yeah, that's why I love cables, because I just feel like they're so addictive in that way. Like, yes, they take a little bit more time and focus, but watching them unfold is so satisfying that, like, you barely notice the extra time that you're putting in. But this is written for DK yarn, so I feel like that would make a really nice weight of hat. The DK yarn plus the cables is going to be warm, but not, like, overwhelming. It looks like it's only written for one size, but I have had good luck with hat patterns sizing up and down just by, you know, adding or removing repeats or changing your needle size, changing like the yarn weight that you're working with. I do wish with hat sizes usually that I like there to be a couple of size options, but some of my favorite hat sizes just don't have that, and you do have to adjust. I have a particularly large head with a lot of hair, and I had no problem making this hat fit me. And if you had a smaller head, then I think it would be easy to just, you know, tighten up the needle size or something. It's, you know, worth looking at the size of the hat and making a decision on whether it would work for you. But it is a lovely pattern. I did really enjoy knitting it, and I plan to re-knit it without making the weird choices that I made. Again, story for another time. But absolutely stunning hat. And I think if you were to gift this to someone, their jaw would drop and they would just, you know, be over the moon about it. So that's the Lark Hat. I highly recommend it. And then my last one on this list is the first of the ones that I will show you from my mother-in-law that she just recently lent me back. But this, I absolutely love this pattern. But this is the Gro Hat by Fiber Tales. So you can see it's kind of blowing out in the light just a little bit, but it has these really lovely little cable details that look like little plants growing up the hat. So I love this hat. This is another one that only comes in one size. And I will say when I looked through the pattern, before I knit this, I read all of the projects on Ravelry, not all of them, but a lot of them. And there were a lot of comments about the hat running small. And so knowing that going in, I purposely knit this with chunkier wool than the pattern called for. And I had no problem getting the hat to fit. It fits me and my big head pretty well, and it fits my mother-in-law as well. So let me pull up my stats on the project just so I can tell you exactly what I did to make this one. So this is knit with 2 strands of Woolfolk Tinned in the colorway 1, and 1 strand of Knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair in the color Rose Clay. I knit this on a US 8 needle with a US 6 for the ribbing. The pattern calls for DK weight yarn, so I think my gauge would probably have come up to a worsted, so I fully went up, you know, quite a bit in my yarn. It also calls for being knit on size 6 needles for the body and size 4 needles for the ribbing. So I also went up a couple of needle sizes. And like I said, this fits great. It is honestly probably a little on the loose side. I'm not sure you need to go up as much as I did. I might have panicked a little because this is a pretty big hat. Like I said, you have to, I have a big head, but I just think it's so cute. I love this hat. I love the little details. I think it came out really cute. I love this color. I was actually with my mother-in-law in the yarn store when I bought this yarn, and I'd originally been thinking about it for myself for a project, and I got home and I was like, I picked out my mother-in-law's perfect colors. Like, I can't use this for myself. This is obviously for her. But the Woolfolk Tinned is an incredibly soft yarn, and then when you pair it with the mohair, it's just, oh my gosh, it's spectacular. But I found this pattern so much fun to knit. So like I said, that's the criteria that I'm talking about that's so important, is you, the knitter, have to be engaged in what you're knitting as the gift, or it is not really worth it. And yeah, it's so soft. It was so fun to work with. It's cannot recommend it enough. I like Fiber Tales. I like her patterns. I like her podcast. She's also on YouTube if you want to, check her out. She's just a lot of fun to watch and has a very beautiful and like calming aesthetic. But yeah, the Gro Hat by Fiber Tales, another showstopper. Like if you gift this to someone, it's just so special and unique and just not something you're going to find in a store. And I really, really love that about knitting, that we can just make these things that are so interesting. Love this pattern. I really want to knit one for myself, and I probably will. So those are my recommended hat patterns. And like I said, I just think you can't go wrong with beanies for people. Everybody needs a beanie, and it's all about just finding, is that person's style a little bit more whimsical and you can get away with the Gro Hat? Or are they a little bit more practical and you want to do the Boon Island hat? Or maybe they're practical but like a little whimsical and you can do the Harlow with like a low contrast 2-color brioche, Like, you got options, but there's just options for everybody, and so I love hats. They are so much fun. Like I said, my other things that I like to knit for people are fingerless gloves. So my number one that I like to knit is, they're nothing fancy, which is honestly what I kind of think makes them amazing, but it's the Fire Pit Mitts by Tayler Earl from Tayler Earl of Wool Needles Hands. If you know of me, you probably know of Wool Needles Hands. So this is the pattern she wrote. And these are not ones that I've gifted. These are actually the ones I made for myself, and they live in my purse, and so I do not take good care of them. And so they are pilling quite a bit. But just to give you an idea of what they are, but they're just these very simple little fingerless mitts. Nothing fancy. So they've got rolled hems, so there's absolutely no ribbing on them. I made mine shorter than the pattern called for, with slightly longer thumbs and fingers, just because that's what I wanted. But yeah, they're nice. Like I said, mine live in my purse because I like to wear them when I'm driving. It gets really cold here in the mornings. But she has an option where they're like almost a full sleeve. But you can knit, them literally any length that you want. And the reason I love these for gifts is because they're so practical. Like, you can gift someone some knitting, like a knitted item, and they don't have to be so precious about it. They don't have to be so worried about it, and they could just use the heck out of it and get a lot of wear out of them. But yeah, I love these. I think these are a great option. I knit these in 2 days while I was going to Nutcracker rehearsals last December. And it only took 2 days because I was at Nutcracker rehearsals. Like, if I hadn't been, I probably would have knit both in like literally a day. They went so fast. It was crazy. I knit mine, just in case you're curious, out of Knit Picks High Desert Worsted in the color Quail. Actually really like this color too. But yeah, easy. I highly recommend these. These are a great gift for someone. There are other options though, if you would like to go with slightly, more special versions though. So the next one that I would recommend, if you just want like a little bit of extra touch, a little bit of extra design than those, would be the Waystone Mitts by Elisa Plummer. I also like Elisa Plummer. I talk about her patterns a lot. I just really like her style. But the Waystone Mitts are, again, another brioche pattern. I do really like knitting brioche. I know it is not everybody's cup of tea, but they're just small, these ones. They're right at the wrist, and the brioche is just so lovely, and it's so well designed the way she has it that they really match the contour of the hand, and they're just a little extra special, maybe. They look a little extra stylish. I think they would, I think anyone who saw these, if you gifted them to them, would be, just floored. And I bet they're just so squishy and wonderful on the hands. So yeah, I think these are great. I think these would make an amazing option. These are another one that I really would like to knit, either for myself or for a gift for someone. I, again, really like brioche, so I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. But these are knit, this is an Aran weight pattern. So they're going to knit up fast. They're small gloves. Like, these would be done in an afternoon. It'd be so easy, which is something we love. These are Available for $7 on Ravelry. I don't think I mentioned it for the fire pit mitts. Those are available for $3.25 on Ravelry. So, you know, the Waystone mitts are going to be a little bit more expensive, but you know, you're also, it's got a little bit more of that design in there, a little bit more of that shaping. So yeah, I think that'd be a fantastic option. If you want that feeling of the ribbing and you don't really want to do brioche, you'd like to just stick to ribbing, again, completely understand. The Roddin Mitts by Isolde Teague look fantastic to me. This is another one I haven't knit myself, but they look so cozy. So these mitts are a worsted weight pattern, and they have what looks like a nice tight 1x1 rib at the cuff to really hold it on your hands, and then the rest of the mitt is knit in 2x2 rib. And it just looks so cozy. It looks like they mold to the hand really well. I love the design. They have extra long on the fingers, so you can fold them back over to keep your fingers extra warm. Or if your fingers were, you know, tips were freezing and you didn't need them, you could always fold it down and just have them be kind of, you know, really long, and so you could kind of snuggle your hands into them. I think these would be an amazing gift. They look so clean and polished, but again, it's so practical. Like, people can really use these. This pattern is available for £6 British on Ravelry. Again, I do not know the conversion. But yeah, I think those look like a fantastic option as well. However, the other one that I can show, this is, again, one of the ones that I knit my mother-in-law. But these are the Hiedra Mitts by Fiber Tales. So these match the Gro Hat. So they still have that same, a very similar cable pattern. I feel like it's not really focusing. But I'll put pictures up here as well so you can see them. But this very similar cable pattern coming up this top, and then this really beautiful braid on either side. And the braid was so much fun to do. You had to like ladder down a bunch of stitches all the way down and then re-pick them up with a crochet hook, and like, seriously, it was so much fun. I want to do it on more projects. I did modify these. The original pattern calls for garter stitch on the palms so that they're extra squishy, but I just liked the look of the stockinette, so I changed this to stockinette here. And hers also in the pattern have the extra long finger area so you can fold it back, but I didn't feel like that necessarily matched my mother-in-law's style, so I just stopped them shorter with than the pattern called for. Mine are knit with Juniper Moon Farm Moonshine in the colorway 2, which is Moonbeam, held with a strand of Knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair in the color Rose Clay. And they match color-wise really well with the Gro Hat. But yeah, I thought these were also just an absolute joy to knit. I loved the cable motif. I thought it was super fun to build, you know, to make up. Like I said, I loved doing the braids. These were like a project, like I cast one on and I didn't really have time to work on it that day. Like, I was supposed to do other things, but I just wanted to start something. And then I sat there and I knit a whole mitt, and like, I didn't move and I didn't get any of my other stuff done that day because I was just having so much fun knitting the mitt. So, you know, proceed with caution, I suppose, but I love these. I think they were great, and I think they're, again, just an absolute stunner if you're going to gift to somebody. This design is just, it's just a little bit more special. It's a little bit more surprising and a little bit more unique, and things like that are really fun to gift to people because they're not gonna be able to find that on their own. Like, you have to make it for them in order for them to own it, which is very cool. Those are all of my hats and all of my mitts that I pulled out. I did want to give a special shout out to scarves and cowls. I feel like that's what a lot of people think of when they think of gift knits. And I have knit quite a few scarves and cowls for people, but I don't really do it anymore. And the reason being just that they take so long. And so to make a scarf for someone, you have to knit, you know, a nice long scarf. It just takes time. And those tend to be projects that I get burnt out on and I start to resent by the end. And I don't really like putting that energy into the gifts that I give people. But on that note, I thought I'd show you the two that I have knit for my mother-in-law. I'm going to go ahead and take my shift cowl off before I pull them up. But the first one gets a little bit of a story time again. So I talked about the fact that we've had to evacuate for multiple fires. And the very first time we ever had to evacuate for a fire, I happened to be knitting when we realized we had to evacuate. And so I grabbed the knitting with me when we left, and we were evacuated for about a week. Again, like I said, we came out okay. It was fine. But in that week, I just fully took all of my anxiety out on knitting this scarf. This knit, yeah, I like to say things are knit with love. This is knit with anxiety. Like the emotion that I put into the stitches was just pure panic. But it, the panic became something very beautiful. So something to be said about that. Now, I do not know what this pattern is anymore. I was not able to find it. It's really long. Like, I can't even get it in the frame. Like I said, knit with anxiety. I was trying to knit until there was no more anxiety, and that was never going to happen. And so the scarf just kept getting bigger and bigger. But one thing I do really like about this pattern is that while it's not reversible, it is nice on both sides. So where the cable is on the off side, you get these really nice little ridges that look like part of the design. I added tassels. And yeah, it's a whole lot of scarf. I have no idea what I knit it with. I have no idea what the pattern was. I really have no information. But yeah, when it was all said and done, I had this huge scarf, and I ended up gifting it to my mother-in-law because I thought she would like it. One thing I would have done differently if I had been planning this as a gift knit, I probably would have made it, like I said, quite a bit shorter because it's really long even for me, and I'm a fairly tall person, and I'm quite a bit taller than my mother-in-law, so I have to assume it's quite long on her. But it's gorgeous. She's kept it all these years, so I think she still really likes it. But yeah, if I had been planning it and hadn't been just knitting it with fear, I probably would have shortened it by about a foot. But yeah, so that's the first one. I've also knit scarves for both my sisters-in-laws, and I've seen them wear them. Like, they seem to really like them as well, but again, both of them just took so long. It's just not something that I gravitate towards at this point. That being said, the next thing I'm going to show you might be my favorite thing I've ever knit. It's definitely a wrap. So not as long as a scarf, but quite a bit, wider. But this is the last of the gift knits for my mother-in-law that she lent back. So this is the Hooray scarf. This was knit with 2 strands of knitting for olive soft silk mohair and the color rose clay. I very purposely did everything in that same mohair for this gift set. They all went together. This was her Christmas gift last year. And I did make a couple of alterations to this, but I will show it to you first. Oh, I just want to stick to itself. But yeah, this is the Hooray scarf. I think of it more as a wrap. It kind of comes around like this, and it's just that right length that if you had like a shawl pin, you could pin it over something, or if you're just a little chilly, you can, kind of bundle up in it. It's insanely soft because of the mohair. And if you get up close, let me make sure I have it facing the right direction, because there's a bit of a wrong side and a right side. But it has this just beautiful, almost like daisy-like pattern that it makes. I love this so much. I knit this in about 2 weeks. I cast it on November 14th last year and cast it off on November 28th. I took it with me everywhere. I was knitting on it at work. I was knitting on it, at appointments. It's just big long scarf. I did make a couple of modifications. I added 2 stitches at the beginning and the end of each row so that I could make a nice selvage. So just slipping the stitches at the ends so that it makes a nice boundary, because otherwise it didn't call for that in the pattern, and it wasn't a deal breaker because in the lace it wasn't super obvious, but I do think that the edge gave it a really nice finish. But yeah, I love this. I think it is just a showstopper. Yeah, this is one of my favorite gift knits that I've done so far. Being said, I mean, it's a big chunk of lace knitting. The lace is simple. It's just the same stitch over and over again. It's nothing crazy. But it was pretty involved, and I don't think I would do this for everybody in my life. Like I said, my mother-in-law is very knit-worthy. She absolutely adores everything that I make. She's been so supportive. She's been watching every single one of these episodes. And like I said, she also crochets, so I know she knows how to take care of these items and that she's going to absolutely, cherish them. And so for someone like that, I don't mind doing, a couple of weeks of lace knitting and making something that I'm really, really proud of to give to her. For some other people who I know might not understand what went into this or might not know how to care for it, I might not make something like this for them, and that's okay. I will make them a beanie. I'll make them the fingerless mitts. Not a worry. Like, that's not that I don't love them any less. I just want to make sure if you're going to put the time in, you put the time in for the people who are really going to understand and really appreciate what you've, created. And yeah, the feeling of like, when she opened, I was so excited to give those things to her. Like, it wasn't like I put in a lot of work and I'm like, well, now it's gone. Like, I got so much out of giving those items away because they were made very intentionally for her and with a lot of love and dedication and, thought behind them, to make them something that she would enjoy and she would get a lot of wear out of. And that to me is super worth it. I love that part of knitting. That's why I gift knit. It's just, it feels so good. Anyways, those are all my show and tell items that I have. Obviously I've gifted a lot more things than that, but I wasn't going to go and track them all down. So, and those are, like I said, that's my pattern roundup. I think if you knit any of those for anybody, they would be absolute winner and you would have a great time knitting them. And, that person would be beyond thrilled to receive it. So with that being said, I'm gonna call it here and go, pay some attention to my dogs who are still being a little grumbly at me as I film this. And yeah, happy knitting, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Bye.